Hi there, and welcome to the Department of Energy's Technical Assistance Program webcast. This is one in a series, and today we'll be talking about integrating experimental design into your program. A key part of understanding what's working and what's not in the programs that we're launching all around the country, so that we can know kind of what to repeat, what to do more of, what to stop as we evolve our programs over time. Next slide, please. Just going to talk briefly about what the Technical Assistance Program is. First, I don't think I mentioned, my name is Marion Fuller. I work at Lawrence Berkeley National Lab. And we're one of many technical assistance providers that are supporting stimulus-funded grantees around the country, both the block grant and the SAP grantees at the state, local, and tribal official level. Next slide, please. So TAP offers a bunch of services. One is webinars like this. And there's a huge database online of past webinars that you can tap into at any time, listen to them, see the slides from past webinars. Huge range of topics, from renewables to efficiency to financing to working with contractors. There's a great range of topics there on the Solutions Center website of the Department of Energy. We also offer the TAP blog, which I'll talk about in a moment, and we offer one-on-one assistance. So if you are a program manager using stimulus dollars and you want to get support on a particular topic, you can submit a request for support. So just as an example, Annika Todd will be talking today about experimental design and how you use that within your program. She's available as one of the many technical assistance providers, and if you'd like to talk to her one-on-one after this call and talk through some of the ideas that you might have about how to integrate some of these principles into your program, she's available to you along with a number of other technical assistance providers. Next slide, please. So the TAP blog is one place that you can go to. The URL is right there on the page. And it covers successful stories from around the country, key resources. It's definitely something worth checking into. We put new blogs up there every month. It has great links to programs, to resources, to good stories that you can use to model your program after, and even folks you can contact on the ground who, like you, are managing programs. You can contact them and start to talk one-on-one to folks around the country who are your peers and who are doing similar activities to you. Next slide, please. And finally, this is the Solutions Center website that we're showing you now, and the Technical Assistance Center, where you actually can log in. You can work with your program officers to do that. You can also contact a technical assistance provider directly. So for example, if you want to email Annika or someone else at Lawrence Berkeley Lab after this webinar to get specific technical assistance on experimental design resources, you can email us directly and we'll just help you through the process of signing up for technical assistance. Next slide, please. So now we'll get right into our program. You on the call should feel free at any time to type in your questions on the question box you see on your screen. You can also raise your hand throughout the presentation, but also at the end if you'd like to verbally ask your question. Either options to you, so feel free to make use of that. Myself and some other staff at Lawrence Berkeley Lab will be answering your questions in real time if we know the answers. Otherwise, Annika and the other speakers will be verbally responding to your questions kind of as they go through their presentation, and we will have time for Q&A at the end. So I'd like to introduce our first speaker. Annika Todd is a PhD researcher at Lawrence Berkeley National Lab. She has experience working also at Stanford's Precourt Institute, was a past co-chair of the Behavior, Energy, and Climate Change Conference, has a lot of experience looking at energy efficiency and other programs and trying to figure out how do we test what's working in a more rigorous way than we might do if we're just launching the program without really thinking about what are the outcomes, what are the results, and how do we know what works. So I'll turn it over to Annika now, and she will introduce some of the other speakers for today.
Thanks, Marion. So today, as Marion said, what I'm going to be talking about is how you can use experimental design in energy efficiency programs in order to make them the most successful and cost-effective programs that they could be. But before I begin, I'll just give you a brief overview of where we're going. So first, I'm going to talk about why experimental design can help you answer questions that you wouldn't be able to otherwise. And then I'll give some specific examples of questions that experimental design can help answer. For most of the presentation, I'm going to focus on sort of the most simple way that experimental design can be used. And then at the end, I'll talk about how things can sometimes get more complicated and what you would need to do to adjust in those cases. We're going to have two really great guest speakers, Meredith Fowley and Carrie O'Neill, who will each talk about how they have incorporated experimental design into home upgrade projects. Okay. So first, I'm going to try to motivate why you'd want to use experimental design and how it can help you. So the main question that everybody wants to know is the program that you're currently designing or currently running the most successful and the most cost-effective that it possibly could be? So in the ideal world, there will be multiple universes. So let's say universe A and universe B, and we could run a program in both of those worlds where the program would be identical except for one small difference that you wanted to test. So maybe in universe A, you send people letters with a picture of some trees on it. And in universe B, you send people letters with a picture of a happy, comfortable family. So then the exact same people would be exposed to these two different programs, and then you could just look at the difference between the effects of program A and program B in these two different universes, and then you'd perfectly know which program worked better. So obviously, in the real world, we don't have multiple universes, and so we can't test all of the programs on exactly the same people. So the next best thing to that is having a randomized experiment. Basically what that means is that you create two groups, group A and group B, and you randomly assign people to one of those groups. Then you give each group a slightly different program design, and then you compare the proportion of households that got upgrades in each group. And some people call this A/B testing. So the key point here is the randomization. So if the people are placed into the two groups randomly, then as long as we have enough people so that the differences between the people sort of wash out, then any differences in outcomes between the two groups must be due to the differences in the programs. So then we're able to say that it was actually the difference in program design that caused the difference in outcomes. And how do we know that we have enough people? This is something that I will get to later in the talk. Okay. So next I'm going to give a few examples of the types of questions that you might want to ask that experimental design can answer. But before I do, there are three important skills that I want to cover. Okay, so the first skill is how to randomize, or how to place households into two groups randomly. So as I'll demonstrate in a minute, it's really important that these two groups are truly random. So imagine that you have a list of households. What you could do is you could just flip a coin for each household and say, heads, and that household goes into group B, tails, that household goes into group A. But for me anyways, flipping a coin isn't that easy. I always drop it. So sort of an easier, more automatic way of randomizing is to use Excel. Excel has a random number generator, and so you can just create a random number for each household and then put all the households that are in the lower half into group A and all the households that are in the upper half into group B. So in this example, I've listed 200 households for simplicity. So 100 households are randomly chosen to be in group A, and 100 are randomly chosen to be in group B. And I only picked 100 because it's a nice round number. Obviously, you could have many more households in each group. In fact, I would recommend aiming for around 250 or more households in each group, so 500 total. Okay, so next, basic skill number 2 is how to measure the outcome. So what you want to do is just write down for each household whether or not that household got an assessment and whether or not they got an upgrade. Then you can just total all of the numbers, and so you end up with something like in group A, out of 100 households, 60 got assessments and 20 got upgrades. And in group B, 30 got assessments and 10 got upgrades. So basic skill number 3 is how to tell if the differences between those two groups actually means something. And like I said in the beginning, if the size of the group is too small, we can't be certain that the difference is caused by the different programs rather than differences between people. This is what we call being statistically significant, but because this involves a tiny bit of statistics and math. I decided to put it at the end so you guys don't all fall asleep. Okay, so now let's go on to some examples. So the first example has to do with marketing messages. So some messages can be more effective than others at motivating people to get upgrades. And so maybe what you'd like to know is what message you can put in your letters or phone calls or emails that will result in the highest number of upgrades. So again, ideally, you would have two alternate universes, and you could test one message in each so that exactly the same people would see a message in each universe. But the next best thing is to use experimental design with random assignment. Okay, so suppose that you wanted to test whether it's better to send people letters that say save energy and save money, or whether it's better to just focus on the money part and just say save money. Okay, so step one is to get your randomly assigned groups A and B, and then give group A one type of letter and give group B the other type of letter. Okay, step two is to just count the number of successes. So out of 100 households in group A, 15 households got upgrades, which is 15%. And in group B, 10 households got upgrades, so that's 10%. So then step three is to then compare group A to group B. So here we can say that message A resulted in 5% more upgrades than message B. And again, later I'll get to the part where we decide whether this 5% difference is sort of a real difference or whether it's just chance. Okay, so as I've stressed a few times, making sure the group assignment is truly random is essential. So let's look at what would happen if we didn't randomize and instead targeted different messages to different groups. So for example, you could imagine targeting message A to people in higher income neighborhoods and targeting message B to people in lower income neighborhoods. So the problem is that now people in group A and group B are different from each other. And so you can never tell whether that 5% difference was caused by the message or whether it's just that households in higher income neighborhoods are more likely to get upgrades in the first place. Okay, so now we're going to have our first guest speaker, Meredith Fowley, who is a professor at UC Berkeley. She's going to talk about how she incorporated experimental design into a weatherization program that she's evaluating. She's using a slightly more complicated method of experimental design called randomized encouragement design. But the basic idea is still the same, which is that random assignment can allow her to determine how successful the program is. So, Meredith?
Great. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Great. So thanks, Annika, and thanks to Annika and Marianne for organizing this. I appreciate being included. I'm only going to speak fairly briefly about this project. It is a work in progress, but for people, if people are interested in learning more, we'd be happy to provide more details. So if you just get in touch with Annika or me directly, we'd be happy to talk to you more about the project. So next slide. Great. So as I mentioned, it's work in progress, and that was the title that went by quickly. I should just mention briefly that this is joint work with Michael Greenstone, who's at MIT, and Catherine Wolfram, who's a colleague here at Berkeley. For those of you who are new to, or are relatively new to the Weatherization Assistance Program, if you can go to the next slide, give you some quick institutional details. This program's been around for decades, but very recently, under ARA, received a huge shot in the arm in terms of dramatic increase in funding, which has dramatically increased the scale and scope of the program. And the basic idea of the program is if you are 200% of the poverty line or below, you are potentially eligible for sort of non-negligible amount of support for weatherization. So I think the average assistance provided to these low-income participating households is on the order of $7,000 worth of energy-efficient retrofits, things like insulation, new furnace, windows, caulking, etc. In some states, it does include baseload interventions such as more efficient refrigerators, etc. But the basic idea is for low-income households, primary homeowners, they're entitled to significant weatherization assistance under this program. Next slide. the primary question we're asking here is quite simple, at least in principle, and that is by how much does this weatherization assistance reduce consumption and expenditures of participating households? And so in keeping with what Annika's been talking about, you know, we wish we had parallel universes where in one universe we kept all households in the status quo state, and in the parallel universe we took some group of households or even all households and offered them or gave them weatherization assistance, and we could compare energy consumption and expenditures across the two universes to come up with a clear estimate of the benefits in terms of money and energy saved to these households of participating in the program. So that's the research question of primary interest, is to try and do that absent parallel universes. And we're also, from a more methodological perspective, interested in understanding how our experimental research design and the estimates we obtain using that design differ compared to other types of estimates that people might construct, either using ex-ante engineering type analysis or non-experimental empirical econometric estimates. But of course I'm going to focus on the first research question here today. And a second order, at least for our purposes, research question, but this is more in keeping with what Annika's been talking about so far. We're also interested in what types of factors make households more or less likely to actually participate in the program. And finally, a research question that I'm not going to talk about at all today, but is certainly one we're thinking a lot about, is measuring non-energy benefits of weatherization assistance. So of course, when you weatherize a home, you not only reduce energy consumption potentially, but you also make the home more comfortable. For some of these low-income households, you make it easier for them to keep up with their energy bills. So those are benefits we're also going to be trying to capture. Okay, next slide. So just to put this in the larger context of policy evaluation, of course, when we're trying to evaluate the impact of a program, we're basically trying to say, you know, there's this outcome of interest and we want to know how it's affected by an intervention we're interested in studying. So to be clear, here we're interested in this intervention that is weatherization assistance. We're interested in how it impacts household energy consumption and expenditures among participating households. And the population we're interested in studying is this eligible population of low-income folks. We happen to be focusing exclusively on in Michigan, but we're actually more broadly interested in all participating households. Next slide. So as Annika mentioned, we're faced with a dilemma when we don't have multiple universes to play around with. So our challenge here is to construct the best possible estimate of what household consumption, energy consumption, and expenditures would have been at participating households had they not participated in the weatherization program. And the challenge, of course, is how do we construct that estimate? With a program like weatherization, we do face a challenge. People often talk about selection bias. Basically, the problem is that the type of people who select into this program, who voluntarily seek out and obtain weatherization assistance, may differ from households that don't. So simply looking at consumption and expenditures over time at participating households and comparing those consumption and expenditure patterns to even observationally similar non-participants, you might worry that you're picking up not only the effect of weatherization, but also other factors that have to do with the fact that these households are just different types of households. So that's the basic challenge we're trying to tackle here, and that's why we elected to pursue an experimental research design. Next slide. Annika really nicely laid out the basics of sort of the simplest approach to this kind of problem, and that's a standard randomized control trial. And so what she described is exactly this. It's you randomly sort the households in your study. You assign, in our case, half of them to weatherization assistance. You assign half of them to a control state where they're not allowed to participate in weatherization assistance, and you compare the two. You're probably realizing as I say that that's just not appropriate here. It's not possible here. We can't force some households to participate in this program. We certainly can't prohibit some eligible households from participating in a program to which they're entitled to participate. So that was sort of off the table for all sorts of very good reasons. We couldn't implement the standard textbook randomized control trial that Annika has been mentioning, which I should say is very appropriate for other applications, just not for ours. Next slide. So just because that's off the table doesn't mean we couldn't pursue an experimental research design. There are alternatives, and one is the one we're using here. It's kind of a jargon-filled title. It's called a randomized encouragement design. the basic idea is rather than randomly assign people to the treatment we're primarily interested in, and here the treatment is weatherization assistance, we randomly assign people to two groups, just as Annika described. Our one group that we're used to thinking of as a treatment group, we actually encourage them to participate. So we don't force them. We don't mandate that they enroll in the program. We basically take our larger population of interest, divide them into two groups, and our treatment group, we really, we visit what we've been doing for the past several months. We send them mailings. We literally knock on their door and help explain to them what's involved in the program. We help them enroll in the program. There's quite a bit of paperwork, et cetera, to be completed. We do all sorts of things to try and convince these people to participate, but we certainly don't force them. Our control group, the half of the population we put on the other side, although it's not half, I'll get there in a minute, but the group that we selected to not encourage, we don't talk to. We certainly collect data on those households in terms of energy consumption and expenditures, but we don't encourage them in any way. That's not to say that they can't participate, and some of those control households certainly will participate on their own accord. So this kind of design, this randomized encouragement design, is certainly useful when, like I mentioned in this case, mandatory participation or the randomized control style approach is just not feasible. It's also particularly useful when you're interested not only in the effect of the program, as we are, but also in the effect of encouragement. Because in the process of encouraging these households, we're learning something about what interventions work and don't work, although that's not our primary research objective. Next slide. So the analysis proceeds. So I'm sweeping a lot of important details under the rug, and as I mentioned earlier, if folks are interested, I'd be happy to get into the weeds in terms of how this randomized encouragement design sort of mechanically works. But basically, at the end of the day, you're going to compare outcomes, in our case, household energy consumption and expenditure, among our encouraged group and our non-encouraged group. And basically, looking at that difference, you can construct a sort of unbiased estimate of the impact of weatherization on a certain group. And that certain group is the group of people that we were able to encourage into the program. So this is an important, slightly nuanced but important clarification. With this approach, we can't get an unbiased estimate of we can't with certainty get an unbiased estimate of the effect of this program on all participating households. We can confidently get an unbiased effect of this program on the households who we were able to encourage into the program with our encouragement intervention, but who otherwise wouldn't have been participating in the program. In our particular case, this is really a useful design because participation levels are quite low in the baseline unencouraged states. We're relatively confident that we're getting a pretty good measure of what we're ultimately interested in, which is the effect of this program on participants, but it's an important clarification to make that really the only people we can say something about are the people who we actually impacted in terms of moving them into the program with the help of our encouragement. One other sort of I hesitated to call the limitation, but certainly a consideration. My understanding is that Annika is going to get into the weeds of power calculations later on. It's worth flagging that the sample size you need to implement a randomized encouragement design is quite a bit larger than the sample size you would need to run a more standard randomized control trial, such as the one that Annika described at the outset, to detect a given level of impact with a given level of precision. Basically, you lose some precision using the randomized encouragement design versus the more direct random assignment mechanism. Next slide. So just to summarize, I think a real advantage of the research design we're using is it does generate this sort of very useful random variation in program participation, which we can use to construct an unbiased estimate of our intervention, in this case weatherization assistance, on household level consumption and expenditures. I do think one of the reasons we're excited about this project is it does demonstrate how you can use randomized or more experimental research designs even in situations and contexts where a straightforward random assignment to treatment versus control is just not possible for political or ethical or practical reasons. And it also allows you to look at other questions in addition to just what's the effect of the intervention you're interested in. You can also play around with the encouragement instrument in that first stage to also get at some interesting questions in terms of what forms of encouragement are more or less effective in terms of bringing people into the program you're interested in evaluating. And with that, I'll wrap up, but people should feel free to contact me if there are questions or desire for more information about the project. We're just now finishing up the encouragement phase, so unfortunately I don't have any estimates of program impacts to report just yet.
Great, thanks Meredith. So we had a couple of quick questions before you go. I know you have to run.
Certainly.
So one just clarification question was, is the low income weatherization limit, what is the low income weatherization limit per household? Is it $6,500 or did you say something different?
Yeah, so and again, I think it varies state by state. I know with the agencies we're working with, I don't know that there's a upper limit, or if there is, it's not binding. What binds for these agencies is the average. I think that they have to keep the average expenditure per household. The number I have in my head is 7,000, but that might be wrong. It might be 6,500. It's in that neighborhood. But I know, yeah, the agency we're working with, they're most concerned about keeping the average below that level. Does that answer the question?
Yeah, I think so. And then, so someone else asked, they're wondering how you control for rebound effects. They say that issue has really challenged them.
This is very, very, very important, and this is sort of getting into that non-energy benefits that I hinted at. So as this, whoever is asking the question is going to put their finger on it. I mean, we are doing surveys. So the answer is not very well. We're doing surveys to try and collect information before and after in both our encouraged and unencouraged group about how many rooms are heated, what the thermostat setting is set at, so that we are able to exploit the random assignment to encourage and unencouraged to try and capture sort of where people are, behavioral elements they may be changing over time in ways that aren't related to the intervention. But to quickly answer your question, we are able to vary with a lot of precision, measure things like energy expenditures and energy consumption with much less precision, sort of using survey instruments. We're trying to capture behavioral changes. You know, if you make the cost of heating your home much more affordable, especially in this population, you can imagine people turning up the thermostat to become more comfortable, and certainly we're finding, at least anecdotally, heating more rooms.
Okay, great. And then let's see, another question is, let's see, how do you get permission to collect data from the control group without encouragement?
That's a great question. The main, the way we defined our study sample was, number one, you had to be eligible for the program, and number two, you had to be in the service territory of the utilities who very kindly agreed to participate in the study. So we signed very long non-disclosure agreements, which, you know, we've promised that we will guard the security of these data, but we've actually got some partner utilities who are willing to give us billing and consumption information for all the households in our studies, so we can follow the consumption patterns of all the households, including those we're not talking to, but we are collecting data on.
Okay, great. And then let's see, there's a few questions about sample size specific things. I think I'm gonna hold those until later when we're actually talking about more numbers.
One thing I'll quickly say is we actually, for the Smart Grid Investment Grant Program, I actually wrote up sort of a document on power calculations for both RCTs and REDs. So I could certainly forward that to you, Annika, if that's useful.
Yeah, that'd be great. I think I might actually have that actually. And then another question was just where they want to know where they can get your information on your other research questions about benefits of the WAP program, or, you know, I think just how to contact you in general.
Yeah, you can feel free to share my email. Annika, is that okay? And they can certainly contact me. Like I said, this is work in progress. We don't have a lot of well-documented results yet, but I'm certainly happy to field questions to the extent that I can.
Okay, great. All right, thank you so much for being on the call.
Thank you.
All right, thanks. Okay, so now I'm going to give another brief real-world example. So this is an experiment that some researchers did where they randomly allocated people to one of 5 groups. So now rather than just A and B, they had groups A through E. what the researchers did was they went around and put notes on people's doors with different messages for different groups. And some notes highlighted the economic benefits of conserving energy, and then some, like number 3 here, or group number C, talked about social norms. It turns out that out of all of these different messages, the one that resulted in the largest energy reductions was group C, the social norms message. And the interesting part here is that when they asked the same people in a survey which message was most motivational, people said that message C was actually the least motivational. So the point here is, even if people think that they know what works the best, sometimes our intuition can be misleading, and experimentation can really help you figure out what actually works the best. Okay, so now let's move on to another type of question that you might want to answer, which is about the incentives that you offer households to get assessments and upgrades. So in these situations, you might not want to offer different incentive levels to different households because there's equity concerns, but you could just change the structure. So let me give you an example. So you might want to test whether it's better to give people the assessment for free, or whether it's better to charge people some small amount, like $50, that just sort of weeds out the people who just want the assessment for free and never intended to get an upgrade. Okay, so again, you could randomly assign people to 2 groups, A and B, give each group a different incentive structure, and then count the number of assessments and upgrades in each group. So let's say we found that in group A, 50 people got assessments, but only 10 got upgrades, while in group B, 20 people got assessments and 10 got upgrades. Then we would conclude that this $50 is effective at increasing the conversion rate from assessments to upgrades, even though people are going to get that $50 back eventually. So again, let's just say that we don't randomly assign people, and instead you let people choose which incentive structure they want, A or B. So the problem in that case is that the type of people who choose incentive A might be different than the type of people who would choose incentive B. And so then you can never tell if the difference in results between the 2 groups is due to the different incentives or due to the different types of people. This is why random assignment is essential. Okay, so now another real-world example for incentive structures. So there was an experiment that some people did with factory workers in China. So all of the workers were told that they would get a bonus in 4 weeks. They randomly assigned workers to one of 2 groups, Group A or Group B. Workers in Group A were told that they would get a high bonus, but the bonus would get reduced for each week that their productivity was low. Workers in Group B were told that they would get a low bonus, but that they would get additional money for each week that their productivity was high. So as you can see, the incentive amount is exactly the same. So a worker that had the same amount of productivity would get paid exactly the same under either one of these structures, but it's just the structure or the framing that's different. Okay, so it turns out in this case that the framing for Group A, which we can call the loss frame, was more effective, and those workers were more productive. Okay, so briefly another type of question you might be interested in is what the best outreach plan is. So maybe you'd have Group A where the households are contacted by phone, and Group B where households are contacted in person. Maybe Group A gets 9% upgrades and Group B gets 19% upgrades. Okay, and obviously those 3 questions that I've mentioned are just a few examples. You could imagine testing a whole range of other program elements just like this. So for example, you could test whether a message saying a message that says prevent the loss of money on your bill is more effective than a message saying save money on your bill. For incentives, you could give Group A a prescriptive-based program where specific measures get specific rebates, and then you can give Group B a performance-based program with a target amount of energy savings. You could also test different ways to structure the recommendation package. So you could, so one way that I think people often do is they give people a laundry list of 50 recommendations. So you could do that for group A, and then for group B, you can give them a prioritized and packaged recommendation. And maybe you'd have, one package that's a comfort package, one package that's an energy savings package, and one package that's sort of a mix between those two things. Or, another thing you could do is give group A only two package choices, one basic package, one cheap, that's cheap, and then one expensive choice. And give group B 3 choices. You could include a medium choice in there and see if it sort of moves people from the basic package to the medium package. And obviously there are, a lot more things that you could test. So, so just figure out what you'd like to know and how you think you could make your program better, and then you can just do this simple A/B test. So just fill in your own question. And of course, we care about outcomes, but we also care about cost effectiveness. So after you do this experiment and you get the differences between the programs, the next step is figuring out the relative cost of those two options. So maybe going door to door results in more upgrades, but it might also be much more expensive than calling people on the phone. So you might actually just want to call people on the phone. Okay, so now we've come to the number crunching part, which is it's really not that bad. So far we've seen how we can randomize people, count the successes, and then look at the percentage difference in upgrades between group A and group B. So the problem is that that the percentage difference might be due to the difference that you're trying to test, but it also might just be due to random chance. Okay, so there's two issues. The first, as I've mentioned before, is that we need to make sure that we have a big enough sample. So, for example, if I told you we had 500 out of 1,000 households that got upgrades in Group A and 600 out of 1,000 households that got upgrades in Group B, you would probably say that Group B's program is more effective. But now, what if I said that there are only 10 people in each group, and 5 people in Group A got upgrades and 6 people in Group B did? So that note that in both situations, we're comparing 50% to 60%. But in that first case, we feel a lot more comfortable saying that it wasn't due to random chance. Maybe a person in that second case just had a bad day or something. I think it would be pretty hard to conclusively say that program B was better in that case. So the second related issue is that given a sample size, let's say we're given a sample size of 1,000 people, we also want to look at the difference in percentages. So like the example above with the 1,000 people in each group, a 10% difference seems pretty convincing that program B was better. But if I told you that the difference was only 1%, in that case it starts to become a little less clear. Okay, so rather than just sort of eyeballing these differences, statistics allows us to formally test if this difference actually matters or if it's just sort of random chance. Okay, so now we're going to get to basic skill number 3, and I'm going to tell you how you can do this. Okay, so if you remember the example for that third question, the outreach plan, Group A, which is the phone contact group, had 9 out of 100 upgrades, which is 9%. And Group B, which had the in-person contact or door-to-door contact, had 19 out of 100 upgrades. So that's 19%. Okay, so step 1 is to just calculate 5 numbers. You want NA, which is your total number of households in Group A, so that's 100. NB, the total number of households in Group B, it's also 100 in this case. And then you want to calculate PA, which is the proportion of upgrades in Group A. So that's just that 9%, but we're going to write it as 0.09. PB is the proportion of upgrades in Group B. That's that 19%, which we write 0.19. And then the last thing that we want to calculate is the proportion of total upgrades in Group A and B. So the total number of upgrades is 9 plus 19, which is 28 out of 200 people. So the total proportion of people that got upgrades was 14%, or 0.14. Okay, so that's step one. And then step two is you just plug in those 5 numbers to get the statistic that we just called the Z statistic. So you just plug them into this equation, and you get a number. So in this case, the number is Z equals 2.04. Okay, so now that we have our Z statistic of 2.04, what we can do with that number is, what we want to do in step 3 is look up the p-value that is associated with that Z and see if the p-value is less than 0.05. Okay, so the easiest way to do this is just to go to Excel. It has a function that will do this for you, which I've written there. So in this case, if our Z statistic is 2.04, our p-value for that is going to be 0.04135. But the main point here is that this p-value is less than 0.05. Okay, so what that means is that the way that we say that is the difference is statistically significant at the 5% level. And what that basically means is we know that there's only a 5% probability that the difference between those two groups, group A and B, was caused by chance. Okay, so why is 5% the magic number? It's sort of an arbitrary cutoff, but it's what scientists have chosen to signify what constitutes a meaningful difference. Okay, so in this case, because our p-value is less than 0.05, we're going to conclude that group B had 10% more upgrades, and then it's very unlikely that that 10% difference was caused by random chance. So we're going to conclude that door-to-door outreach results in 10% more upgrades. So on the other hand, if we had found that the p-value was greater than 0.05, then we would conclude that although group B had more upgrades, there's too big of a risk that the difference could have been caused by random chance, and so we can't say that one results in more upgrades than the other. Okay. So again, this is the simplest case, and there are a lot of ways that you can have slight variations. So, for example, you might not be able to randomize households. So, for example, if you're trying to figure out whether one billboard works better than another one, then you obviously can't target that billboard to each household. So in that case, you would have to change your statistics a little bit, and we're going to put some of these extensions like this one up on the website. Another extension is, so far we've been talking about measuring program success in terms of number of upgrades, but you could also imagine measuring success in terms of how many dollars customers invest in the upgrades on average. And another extension is, so as Meredith was saying, as her program is doing, rather than test 2 slightly different programs, you could test how effective the program is overall relative to no program, and then you probably want to use a randomized encouragement design like Meredith was. So there was a couple of questions about the numbers. So why 500 total? If we why did I suggest you should have 250 households in each group? So if we go back to the statistics slide, the reason that I chose that number is just because if you have 250 households in each group, then that means that you can detect a difference between group A and group B that's around 5%. Okay, so if you had let's say you had the phone people and the door-to-door people, again, that's group A and group B, and there's a difference of 5%, that means that with 250 people in each group, you could actually detect that difference and say that it's statistically significant. If you could obviously, if you thought that the difference between those two groups was going to be much larger, so let's say that you thought that you were going to get a 50% increase in the number of upgrades with group B than group A, then you could have a smaller number of people. And you can go back to, let's see, to the Z statistic, and you can sort of see where those numbers come in that Z statistic, and you can calculate for yourself, what you think the difference is, so that top portion, that PA minus PB, that's sort of what you think the difference between those two groups is going to be. So maybe that's 5%, or maybe you think it's 50%. And then you can plug those NA and NB, the number of people in group A and the number of people in group B, and just sort of play around with it yourself and just come up with a number that you feel comfortable with. Okay. And as Meredith said, you're going to need a much larger number of people if you're doing this randomized encouragement design. You're also going to need a much larger number of people if you are randomizing neighborhoods. So just keep that in mind. Okay, so now we're going to have our second guest speaker, Carrie O'Neill, who will tell you about her experience incorporating experimental design into Connecticut's Neighbor-to-Neighbor Energy Challenge, which is a Better Buildings program. Carrie?
Hi, Monica. Thank you, everybody, and thank you for the opportunity. So you're going to forward the slides, is that correct? Hello?
Yes, I believe the slide. Hi, I think the slides will be available either online, or we'll email them out to the group, or both, probably.
Oh, we don't have the slides. Okay, I didn't realize that. Okay, so I'm talking without slides. Alrighty.
Oh, Carrie, sorry. I thought you meant to email to the people. The slides are on the screen, yes.
Oh, they are? Okay, they're not on my screen.
Oh, they should be. They should be
I still see real-world example number 5, Carrie O'Neill. Okay,
oh, sorry.
There we go. All right, so you can go on to the next one.
Okay.
You can go to the next one. So just to let everybody know about our program and what our program model is, because it does impact what we're able to test and areas that we're not able to test. We use a community-based marketing and outreach model, and then to acquire customers, and we leverage a state ratepayer-funded program for residential customers for the assessment. And then there are some rebates and incentives available for the upgrades. So we don't have direct control over the assessment process and the upgrade process. We are also operating in 14 smaller communities of about 5,000 to 30,000 in population. It's a diverse housing stock. The communities are all over the state, and they vary in density and demographics, all the way from exurban and rural to suburban, and suburban density varies as well. Very affluent to less affluent. So it's a really interesting mix. The gateway to the upgrade is this direct install / assessment program. It's called Home Energy Solutions. There's a $75 copay to the customer, and on that first visit you get a lot of great value and services. There's a blower door test, there's air sealing and duct sealing and lighting and water measures, and then you're given rebates for installation and appliance upgrades if you're eligible. And this is a state program that when we put our grant application together, we knew was trying to transition their focus away from the direct, those first measures, early low-hanging fruit measures, into deeper retrofits. But the contractor base is not fully there yet. So that's really the role of our program outside of the constraints of a regulatory cost-benefit test model, to be able to really push the envelope from that dead ending at that HES visit towards that market for deeper retrofits. So that's just some level setting. Next slide. So just a little bit of context in terms of the tools that we have in place for this support. In terms of what we have on the program-facing side, we have community organizing tools and outreach staff that are in place in each one of our 14 towns. And our entire program is managed through an integrated application and data platform that uses Salesforce on the back end. And we use a lot of reporting and a lot of analysis and pipeline reporting and dashboard reporting to manage and track our progress on a daily, weekly, monthly, quarterly basis. And then in terms of the tools that we provide that are customer-facing, we have branded visibility kits within each of our towns that are leveraged by trusted sources, nonprofits, schools, church, faith-based, you name it. And we do workshops partnered with our local outreach partners. And our own program staff does a lot on the customer follow-up and refer a friend process. And we also leverage a fair bit of online and social media as well. So those are some of the tools that we have at our disposal. Next slide. Just really, really quickly, we take, so in listening to Annika and Meredith go through program design and how you can use experimentation, it's kind of music to our ears. We use a lot of different analysis tools in our program design. It's really focused on kind of continuous program analysis and continuous program refinement. We call it action research. And there are a number of different tools that we use in terms of this hybrid approach to analysis. So I'm on slide 4, Annika, the quantitative and qualitative approaches. So we use a qualitative set of tools. One of the tools is a listening to the voice of the consumer tool, which one of our program partners is Kat Donnelly, who's getting her PhD at MIT in behavioral science as it relates to residential energy efficiency, which is great. And she's actually working on her PhD in our program, which is awesome for us. So much of, and she's backpacking through Yosemite today, so much of what I'm talking about is directly related to her work, and she supports us in this. And so she'll take us through a process of trying to understand, as we're interacting with consumers, whether it's an event or an outreach, what that experience is like and how we can improve on it. We also use surveys and feedback forms. Some of this is qualitative, but some of it is also quantitative, whether it's SurveyMonkey or what have you. We sometimes blur the line on these surveys, so they're not always pure quantitative. Sometimes we view them as more color and qualitative. And we also have a number of quantitative tools at our disposal, including baseline data on energy usage, which we get from our utility partner, which is extremely helpful. And then we can also do a deep dive on our own data, because we have all the data at our disposal on where people are falling off in the process, whether it's signing up for the assessment, completing the assessment, the upgrade, bid process, or completing. Where I'm really going to focus the attention today, though, on is what we call A/B testing, or randomized control group testing. And where we're using it primarily is on the front end in messaging, whether it's email subject lines, for activation, online, and in our collateral and wording to try to get people to act at a certain point in the process. Next slide. So in terms of kind of experimental design in action in real life in a Better Buildings program, where are we trying to deploy this? We have a particular issue. I'm sure it's familiar to many, many of you in the Better Buildings program. People are getting stuck between the assessment and the upgrades. I'm sure everybody's got issues around that to one degree or another. For us, it's a particularly challenging area, because we know the base of our contractors is not yet at that whole home performance level that we want them to be. So we've got a lot of work to do there. So we've designed a couple of tests to see what we can do on the messaging side that will help us move the market, move the customer forward, while we're through a parallel path working with our contractors to kind of up their game on their side of things, because of course they're very crucial to that problem as well. So we think about comparing rational and social messages, and we think about comparing a savings message with a wasting framing. So Annika talked about that gain versus loss framing from a behavioral economics perspective. So I'm going to talk a little bit about how we do that. We have a couple of places where we're doing this. One of them is in an online tool that we're getting ready to launch that's in beta right now, which is a do-it-yourself energy advisor tool. That's what we call it. It's really an online audit tool that in our program we use as a pre-engagement, customer engagement tool to drive people into the assessment, while at the same time priming them for the assessment is not a dead end. The assessment is for you to identify and solve problems and do whole home retrofits, which is really different in our market. It's a paradigm change. And so I'll take you through some of the control group, or the ABCD testing we're doing there on messaging. The other place that we're doing it is in our Refer a Friend program. So we know that referrals, word of mouth, are very, very popular in terms of driving, or one of the most important ways of driving consumer demand in many of these markets. And so we're playing with a couple of different positionings on our Refer a Friend program in one of our own direct install lighting programs, which is another pre-acquisition tool or customer acquisition tool into the assessment. Next slide. So in terms of the behavioral experiments that Kat Donnelly has designed for our do-it-yourself energy advisor, what we're working on there is in terms of the results of that very simple online audit, only 20 questions, they're all optional, they'll all default to give you a sense of where your opportunities are in your home. What CAT has designed is on both the social scale and on the gain-loss framing, a 4-cell test, an ABCD test, where the control group is the version 1 group, where we're really gearing the message towards you, so kind of you, the individual, and we're emphasizing savings, so that's the rational savings message, versus in version 2, it's more of, again, you, but a loss aversion, so we're emphasizing waste. And then in control groups, in group 3, we're using social norms. So the focus isn't on you, but it's on us, joining your neighbors and that social norm messaging, but also emphasizing savings, like in version 1. And then the 4th group is using social norms and emphasizing waste. So we're trying to test those 4 different things. So if you go to the next slide, you'll see, it's kind of hard to see, but basically the place in which we're testing these messages is in the results screen that you get when you go through this online audit. And in the area in the pink, what we're playing around with there, and a couple of other places in terms of the wording on this results page, to get at those 4 different messages, comparing rational and social and saving versus wasting framing. And so we know, and you heard Annika talk about how even with those folks who we know got a social norm message, and that's what motivated them to act. If you go back and survey them, they'll tell them, they'll give the Boy Scout answer that they were doing it to save money because we're all supposed to want to save money, but that's not really why we act. That may be one of the motivators, but that's not, often the prime trigger to get us to act. So we're trying to test these 4 different messages to see which one of them will be most effective in getting people into the assessment, and then we'll track them all the way through the upgrade to see what's most effective in carrying it all the way through the upgrade. Although in our situation, I will tell you that there are many, many other factors that will come into play once they get into the upgrade process and the bid process. So it's not clear to me whether those results, our experiment results, will help us determine what drove upgrades, but we should be able to tell what at least drove assessments, because we do have a high degree of variability still in our contractor base. And so we're in the process of finalizing this 4-cell test right now, and it should go live in the next month or 2. The way in which we'll handle the randomization is that this is an online program, an online tool, and so no matter how people come in to this tool, whether they're coming to our website, whether they're driving them there through email activation, through our community group outreach, our online platform provider will randomize which version of the tool and which version of the results each household gets, so that we can maintain that randomization. Just one other note about this experiment, Kat Donnelly's advisor is one of her advisors is Dan Ariely, who's at Duke University, the behavioral economist. He wrote the book Predictably Irrational, and so she's worked with him in designing this experiment so we can, ensure that we're using best practices. So we're really excited about this experiment. So that'll be launching in a month or 2, and then we will run it as long as it takes to get the kind of N or the control group population so that we can have statistically significant results. If you go to the next slide, so one other example of where we're running a behavioral economics experiment that's getting at different messaging is in our refer a friend process, or refer a friend cards that we leave behind when we're out doing lighting. And this is another customer acquisition tool to get folks into the assessment and into upgrades. And we're comparing a form letter versus a more slightly personalized letter that increases the social messaging. And we're actually testing 2 different things here. We've already tested where in that visit we should actually present the card. Should we do it at the end? Should we do it at the beginning? Should we do it at the middle? We have a very structured process to the visit. And the early findings are that at the beginning of the visit, to get those postcards filled out versus the middle seems to be the better place to introduce this tool. And we're still waiting on getting the data back in terms of which version works better. And quite honestly, one of the challenges we have here is staff training and in making sure that we are randomizing appropriately and can we track our data appropriately. We had a fair bit of snafus when we rolled this out, and we weren't tracking appropriately which household got which version, which is of course screwing up the entire experiment. So we're back at the drawing board with this, again, with a better process and better tracking. So we hope to have results on this in a few months in terms of which messaging is more effective at driving people into assessments, which is the top of our funnel. So that's where we're using experimental design in our program. But experimental design is just, of a piece of a much more holistic approach to how we're using a number of different research tools. So I'll just take a few minutes to walk through how we're, kind of a January to the present example of how we're putting all these tools together to solve problems. And we really take a problem-solving orientation. So if you want to skip ahead, Annika, 2 slides to where we talk about the approach and action. So started back in January with knowing that the leads that we were getting for our assessments were closing in terms of actually completing the assessment visit at way too low a rate, only 26%. And we identified this initially because our contractors were giving us feedback like, what the heck, the quality of your leads is terrible. And then we had pipeline reports and dashboards that were obviously confirming this. It wasn't just the anecdotal noise. And we started to put together a bunch of tools to analyze the problem. We went through a listening to the voice of the participant exercise to understand on the messaging side of things what was going on in that outreach. And we also did a version of that with contractors themselves to get their perspective on what their feedback was when they were trying to reach these folks to schedule the visit. We did a deep dive on data to analyze the leads that we were getting from all our different outreach activities and then which contractors they were going to and what have you. Then we did a really deep dive on our own internal processes and looking at every single touch point to see what was going on there. If you go to the next slide, at a really high level from the qualitative analysis, we understood right off the bat we were just doing a really poor job of sourcing qualified leads. We didn't understand what we were selling. We were doing a poor job setting expectations. And so we were giving really poor quality leads to our contractors. So that was problem number 1. Next slide. On the quantitative analysis, when we started to do the deep dive on the data, we saw a lot of interesting things. For instance, the contractor that was getting the most leads wasn't reporting any data to us at all, so that was skewing our data, so we had to go do a lot of work to get better data. And then, of course, when they did report the data, it was a pretty grim picture, and they had numerous issues with losing leads, ignoring leads, what have you, so that spoke to deeper issues. We also saw for our utility program administrator, back when we launched the program, they were assigning leads out to contractors, and they had periods of time where they would take weeks to assign leads out, and then they would lose whole batches of leads. We had 100 leads lost at one period in time. So that was also distressing. So even if we were sourcing qualified leads, there was a very high degree of probability in 9 of our communities that they weren't going to get serviced. Next slide. So we started working through the solutions, and a number of process things were put into place. We took over lead distribution. We got all of our contractors onto a portal so that they could report to us in a timely way. We did huge amount of retraining in our team in terms of how you do the pitch. We put a receipt in place, so if a customer signed up for this assessment, they would get a receipt, essentially a reminder that would outline all the steps. They would know who was going to be contacting them. We changed the confirmation email, et cetera, et cetera. And then we saw immediately a bump. Within a few weeks, we saw a 35% increase in the close rate, and right now our close rate is over 50%. It's still not where it needs to be, and there are still issues there. So one of the things that came up is we decided to do a survey of everybody who had said they wanted to have an assessment but was non-responsive after 2 weeks. And we also did an assessment of anyone who had already, we did a survey of anyone who had gotten home energy solutions and whether or not they moved forward, thinking about upgrades as well. So if you go to the next slide, on On the survey of folks who had already had an assessment but hadn't moved forward to upgrade, so you can imagine if our close rate on assessments wasn't very good, you can imagine our upgrade rate was like phenomenally low. And so we used this opportunity to start to turn our attention to, well, even for those folks who are completing the assessment, what's going on with the upgrade rate? And we did a phone email survey in April, coinciding with this deep dive on our process, and we learned a number of things from our customers. We learned that in many, many, many cases, the contractor was simply not providing enough information to homeowners, and they felt that they were just not learning enough, and therefore, and we also saw in our survey results that those that felt they weren't learning enough, their propensity, their scores on whether or not they even planned future upgrades were much, much lower, and whether or not they'd even done them or not. And so we went through a process of starting to recommend to our contractors changes in their processes. And we also started to think about tools that we could develop to help describe the return on investment, the positive cash flow, and then the different messaging. So in that DIY Energy Advisor example, where that's a pre-engagement tool to getting the customer into the assessment, we're going to also ultimately use that tool with contractors at the kitchen table when they've had the assessment, and hopefully by then we'll understand best which messaging is most effective. We also saw a huge variability when we started to dive into our data on what's happening between the assessment and upgrades on what the bid rate was in terms of which contractors were actually providing bids to our customers. At that point in time, we were working with 6 assessment vendors, and we had a bid rate as low as 0% for 3 of our contractors to as high as 49% for our best performing contractor, and then the other 2 were in between. And that raised tremendous red flags in terms of, again, if you think of your pipeline in your funnel, if you're bringing people in and you're trying to get them into the assessment and then to the upgrade, if you have, just like in our lost lead or poor quality lead example with assessments, if we have folks that are completing the assessment and we have contractors who aren't delivering any bids, there's no hope that obviously people are going to get upgrades. So that's our next frontier. That's what we've been spending the summer on. And we've instituted new program guidelines for our contractors. We've issued an RFQ that we're in the process of formally reselecting contractors that have these new program guidelines in place. And then, of course, we're continuing to refine our own processes and where we can improve things. Last slide, additional research that we are going to be doing, we are going to go back in and we're going to resurvey a much broader population of folks that have gotten home energy solutions, and we're going to try to peel back additional motivations and barriers. We do have one contractor that's using the Energy Advisor model, so we're going to try to understand the value of that and whether or not that's something we can scale up. And we'll also be doing focus groups and one-on-one interviews to get some more in-depth insights. So that's an example of how we kind of put everything together to do continuous program design. And with that, I'm happy to take questions.
So if there's anybody that has a question specifically for Carrie, then go ahead and type it in or raise your hand on the webinar. Okay, and if not, let's see. I'm going to address one more question that that we had earlier about sample size. Somebody asked if you have a very small sample size, what you can do, and I was just going to mention that we're also going to put up a spreadsheet online where you can sort of play around with the numbers and see how it would work out if you have different numbers in each group, and what percentages does it lead to, and how you can be sure that that's due to the difference in programs rather than random chance. So does anybody, so I don't know, does anybody now, oh, we just got another question. Let's see, for Carrie, what community are you working in, Carrie?
We're in 14 communities across Connecticut, so we have communities in the more affluent southwestern part of the state, we're in the central part of the state, the eastern part of the state, so we're kind of all over in 14 different communities. If someone's interested in the specific 14 communities, I'm happy to email that to them, or they can email me and I'll email it to them.
Okay, and another question for you. How many contractors are participating in your program?
So, you know, we funnel people into our state ratepayer-funded assessment program, and there we're working with 6 contractors that do the assessment. And the assessment is the gateway to the upgrade in our model. And those contractors are, they're kind of a hybrid. Some do the work themselves, so some will do the installation or the HVAC work. Others don't, and they refer it out to partners, and then others will also GC it. So it's very much a hybrid market in our program model. We are just going through the process right now of reselecting vendors, and we know that we will select in more vendors for the assessment, and we hope to have a little bit more control out of the over the contractors that are also doing the follow-up work. So that number will go up, which we have some trepidation about, because we've seen challenges just working with our 6 assessment vendors and their subs and referral partners, but we do know that we will have to increase the number of contractors we're working with, because we're in a state that has a high number of oil-heated homes, and the ratepayer-funded programs just put some constraints on funding for that program, which has forced us to bring more contractors in.
Okay, and a couple more questions are coming in. So let's see. One question is, are these fairly large firms, including all the subs?
No, there are a couple of large assessment firms that really are having a hard time. That example of the firm giving 0% bids, that's an example of a very large assessment firm. They have 12 to 18 crews. At the peak, they had 18. You know, they've come down to about 12 crews out doing assessments, but they're really not primed to do the upgrades. But then you have other firms that just have 1 or 2 crews out doing assessments. So it really varies, but by and large, I would say even our largest are not all that large.
Okay, and another question is, was the idea for issuing a receipt, was that developed out of a suggestion from the participants?
It was actually developed out of, so not per se, but through that listening to the voice of the customer experience that we went through and doing our surveying. What we heard again and again is, well, I didn't know that somebody was going to, you know, a contractor was going to have to call me and schedule a visit. Well, I didn't understand. People didn't understand what the next steps were in the process. And we heard that repeatedly through a lot of different analysis that we had done, as opposed to people complaining proactively, but kind of the same net result. And so as we thought about improvements that we could make to the process, one of the things we started thinking about is, well, we should really just lay all those steps out. And we also had talked to a number of other programs and talked about what their process was. And, you know, kind of whether it was called a receipt or not, in one form or another, they were doing a much better job of setting expectations. So that's where we decided to develop what's essentially a receipt, or it's a reminder card, but something physical, because we were already doing email, so something physical that someone could have. And interestingly, that expectation setting was less an issue with folks who signed up online. It was more an issue with folks who signed up through our community-based outreach. And so that's where you have the opportunity, obviously, to provide a hard copy receipt.
Okay. And another, let's see, can you describe what exactly an energy advisor does?
Yeah, in this one particular example with one of our firms in one of our communities that's using an energy advisor, what they're doing is it's really somebody who will is available to hold the hand of the customer to kind of interpret the results of the assessment, and if they have any questions, they'll deliver the bid to them, and they'll be available to them through the process. It's not like it's a required part of the program approach. It's really there as a help and an assistance to the customer. And so we have one firm, again, doing it in one of our communities. And although interestingly, that same firm does operate in some of our other communities, and they don't have it in place in the other communities. So one of the questions there is how sustainable and affordable that model is for a contractor. That's not something our program is paying for, but it is something that we're going to do some research on to understand the value of it. And the program is going to be adding a new staff position that will be both a hybrid contractor liaison role, which is where we think we can have the best leverage, but they will also be available to customers if they have questions. We have heard from a number of programs that the ability to say you have someone available to answer questions is very important, but the utilization of that can be quite low. So we've decided to structure that position as a hybrid where we think 80 to 90% of their time will be supporting contractors and 10 to 15% of the time will be supporting customers.
Okay, great. And so another question for you is what exactly is your firm's role in the program?
Our firm's role is as program administrator. So we are working with all the various program partners, including the utility administrator. For the Home Energy Solutions Program, we're working with the contractors, and we are, really, managing the program on a day-to-day basis. We also do a lot of the measurement and verification and evaluation as well. So in addition to us, we have a community outreach partner, which is a nonprofit, a local nonprofit in the state. We have a marketing partner, Smart Power. Our outreach partner is Clean Water. We have, and so Clean Water does community organizing. With our 14 communities, we have the Student Conservation Association, which manages a core of recent college grads that are interns with the program. And we have an IT platform provider, Snug Home. So we have a number of different partners that we coordinate.
Okay, great. And so are there any other questions, either for Carrie or let's just open it up now and say, are there any questions about anybody who's thinking about an experiment they might want to do and they just have a question? And I also wanted to mention that I think I've mentioned a couple of times that we're going to put up a spreadsheet and the PowerPoint online, and that's going to be at drivingdemand.lbl.gov. And you can also sign up for our mailing list on that website. So now, does anyone else have any kind of random questions they'd like to ask? Any other thoughts or anything? I'm going to put up my, this is my contact information. So, again, you can go to the website, drivingdemand.lbl.gov, or you can email me and ask questions. And let's see, we just got one more question. What are average and percentage energy savings from the program? Carrie, I think that's for you.
For our program?
Yeah.
Because we've had such a stellar job getting upgrades done. I don't know that I could really, I think our numbers are too small at this point. On the assessment itself, because it is direct install and there's about $200 in annual average annual savings delivered on that first visit. That program runs at about 10 to 11% in average savings. What we've seen in our upgrades is, to the extent that we've had upgrades done, which has been pretty limited for the numerous problems that we've uncovered and identified, is it's a very wide range, anywhere from maybe an additional 10% over the 10% they already got through the Home Energy Solutions visit, to up to 35 or 40% additional. It's a wide range, but it's a small number so far, so I'd be reluctant to characterize anything at the moment. We see that in the job size too. The average job size, runs, I think around $3,400, but it's all over the map. It's as low as $650 and it's as high as $12,000. So that average masks a high degree of variability in the job size that we're seeing.
Great. Okay, Carrie, thank you so much for talking. I really enjoyed your talk, and I think nobody else seems to have questions, so I think we're going to end the webinar now. Again, anyone, feel free to email me. My email address is up on the screen, or go to that website, drivingdemand.lbl.gov, and thank you all for participating.